Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced glass, watching the distant blue marble that had once been humanity's home. The silence in the ship's corridors felt different now, heavier, filled with the weight of billions of absent voices. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council's corrective action, and the rescue ships were still finding nothing but empty cities and scattered bones. Another transport is reporting the same thing, Captain, Lieutenant Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. New Tokyo, Sao Paulo, Lagos, they're all the same. No survivors found in any of the major population centers. Sarah closed her eyes, forcing herself to remain steady. As commander of the deep space research vessel Endurance, she had been light years away when it happened. Her crew of 200 scientists and military personnel represented less than 1% of what remained of the human race. Across the galaxy, perhaps 50,000 humans survived, scattered across mining colonies, research stations, and exploration ships too far from Earth to receive the Council's gift. The Galactic Council had been clear in their transmission, broadcast across all human frequencies with mechanical precision. Humanity had been classified as a Type 7 aggressive species following their expansion into 17 star systems. The Council's bioweapon had been deployed as a population control measure to bring human numbers down to sustainable levels of fewer than 1 million individuals. What the Council hadn't anticipated was the reaction of those who survived. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from colony ship Prometheus, Communications Officer Vale reported. Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with all surviving ship commanders within the hour. Sarah nodded, her jaw tightening. Miguel Rodriguez commanded the largest human settlement beyond Earth, New Horizon Colony, with nearly 30,000 residents. If anyone was organizing a response, it would be him. The holographic conference materialized in the Endurance's briefing room 47 minutes later. 12 faces appeared around the table, the commanding officers of every significant human presence remaining in known space. Sarah recognized most of them: Commander Liu from the mining operation in the Vega system, Captain Okafor from the agricultural world of New Eden, and Dr. Petrov from the Xenobiology Research Station orbiting Kepler 442b. Admiral Rodriguez looked older than Sarah remembered, his weathered face bearing new lines of grief and rage. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be direct. The Galactic Council murdered 11 billion of our people. They didn't destroy our military or target our infrastructure. They killed our children, our elderly, our civilians. They committed genocide, plain and simple. Captain Okafor leaned forward, his expression grim. Miguel, we all share your anger, but we're talking about a coalition of 67 spacefaring civilizations. The hegemony alone has a fleet of over 10,000 warships. The Crystalline Collective has technology we can barely comprehend. How do we fight that? Rodriguez's smile was cold and sharp. David, you're thinking like prey. The Council sees us as an infestation to be controlled, not an enemy to be respected. That's their first mistake. Dr. Petrov spoke up, her Russian accent thick with emotion. The bioweapon they used, I've been analyzing the reports from the surface. It's specifically tailored to human DNA, incredibly sophisticated. But it tells us something important: they had to study us extensively to create it. They know our biology, our psychology. They think they understand us. But they don't, Commander Liu added, understanding dawning in her expression. They study us like lab rats, not like warriors. Rodriguez nodded. Exactly. The Council operates on principles of calculated dominance and species management. They've maintained galactic stability for over 4,000 years by applying measured force to keep younger species in line. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to be managed. Sarah felt something cold and determined settling in her chest. What are you proposing, Admiral? The Council has research stations, administrative centers, and processing facilities scattered across 200 systems. Most are lightly defended because no species has ever been stupid enough to attack Council infrastructure directly. Rodriguez's expression grew darker. They're about to learn that humans don't follow their rules. The conference continued for 3 hours as they discussed resources, capabilities, and targets. The surviving human forces were scattered but not helpless. The mining colonies had access to raw materials and industrial fabrication facilities. The research stations possessed advanced technology and scientific expertise. The military vessels carried weapons and experienced personnel. Most importantly, they had something the Council had never encountered, a species with absolutely nothing left to lose. After the other commanders signed off, Sarah remained alone in the briefing room, staring at the star charts displayed on the main screen. The Council's closest administrative center was in the Rigel system, a massive orbital platform housing over 3 million Council personnel from a dozen different species. Her communications officer's voice crackled through the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving requests from crew members asking about shore leave rotation. Some of them have family on Earth they want to visit." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. There would be no shore leave, no family visits, no return to normal. Normal had died with 11 billion people 3 months ago. "Vale, please inform all department heads that we're implementing Protocol 7, she said, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "We're going dark. No more communications with Council monitoring stations, no more compliance with galactic shipping regulations, no more pretending we're still the harmless little species they thought they were managing." "Protocol 7, Captain? That's wartime footing." "Yes, it is," Sarah replied, watching distant stars burn in the darkness of space. "Because that's exactly what this is." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place on 57 human vessels and installations. The Council had succeeded in reducing humanity's numbers, but they had failed to account for one crucial factor: the survivors were no longer the explorers and colonists who had peacefully expanded into space over the past century. The survivors were the ones humanity had sent to the most dangerous, isolated, and challenging locations in known space. They were scientists who had volunteered for decades-long missions to hostile worlds, military personnel who had signed up for deep space patrols, and colonists tough enough to carve civilizations out of airless rocks and poisonous atmospheres. The Council had killed the peaceful Earthbound majority and left alive the most dangerous members of the human species. Dr. Sarah Kim worked through her third consecutive night in the xenobiology lab, her tired eyes scanning genetic sequences that had taken the Council decades to compile. The bioweapon had been incredibly sophisticated, but sophistication left traces. Every genetic marker the weapon targeted told her something about how the Council understood human biology. "Doctor, you need to sleep," her assistant Marcus said, bringing her another cup of coffee. "Sleep is for species that aren't extinct," Sarah replied without looking up from her microscope. "Marcus, look at this protein sequence. The weapon targets cellular reproduction, but it also affects memory formation in the hippocampus. Why would a population control measure need to affect memory?" Marcus leaned over her shoulder, studying the data. "Maybe they wanted to prevent anyone from remembering the attack?" "No, that's not it." Sarah sat back, pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. "They've done this before. The memory modification wasn't meant to hide the attack from survivors, it was meant to make the victims forget their own anger before they died. The implications hit both of them simultaneously. This wasn't the Council's first genocide. The bioweapon was too refined, too perfectly calibrated to human psychology. They had tested it, refined it, used it before. "How many species do you think they've managed this way?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah pulled up her database of extinct galactic civilizations. The list was longer than she wanted to contemplate. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Meanwhile, in the machine shops of asteroid mining station Delta 7, Chief Engineer Thomas Wright was discovering exactly how much damage a determined human could inflict with industrial equipment and scientific knowledge. The mining station's fabricators were designed to process raw asteroid material into construction components for space stations and ships. With some creative reprogramming, they could also produce things that the Galactic Council would have found extremely concerning. "Chief, are you sure about this?" Technician Rodriguez asked, watching Wright input specifications that definitely weren't in the standard fabrication database. "Elena, the Council killed my wife, my kids, my parents, and my sister," Wright replied, his hands steady as he programmed the molecular assemblers. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The device taking shape in the fabrication chamber looked innocuous enough, a small cylinder barely larger than a coffee mug. Inside that cylinder, however, was a precisely engineered collection of nanoscale machines designed to seek out and dismantle the specific crystalline structures that formed the basis of hegemony ship hulls. Wright had spent 20 years studying exotic materials for mining applications. The Council's member species used a lot of exotic materials in their technology. Materials that had very specific weaknesses if you knew exactly where to apply pressure at the molecular level. "How many of these can we produce?" Elena asked. "With our current raw materials?" "About 50,000. Wright smiled grimly. "The beautiful thing is, they're completely undetectable by standard Council sensors. As far as their scanners can tell, these are standard human emergency beacons." Across the mining station, similar scenes were playing out in dozens of workshops and laboratories. Humans were very good at making tools, and they had gotten very creative about what qualified as a tool when the survival of their species was at stake. Captain Chen received the first progress reports 2 weeks after the conference with Admiral Rodriguez. The numbers were staggering. Every human settlement had contributed something to what they were beginning to call the Reckoning. New Horizon Colony was producing modified faster-than-light drives that could turn cargo ships into kinetic weapons capable of devastating orbital installations. The agricultural worlds were synthesizing biological agents specifically designed to target Council member species. The research stations were developing sensor technologies that could track Council ships across star systems and weapons that could exploit the specific physics principles underlying Council defensive systems. Most disturbing of all, the deep space exploration teams were reporting the discovery of at least 15 dead civilizations in previously unexplored systems. All showed signs of biological warfare. All had been spacefaring species that had expanded beyond their home systems. The Council's genocide of humanity wasn't an aberration. It was standard procedure. "Captain, we're ready to begin Phase 1, Lieutenant Morrison reported. All teams are in position." Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. 57 points of light, each representing a group of humans who had decided that if their species was going to die, they would make the galaxy remember it. "Signal all units," she ordered. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. Remember, we're not trying to win a war. We're trying to teach the galaxy what happens when you murder humanity's children." The first target was a Council research station in the Vega system, the same facility where the bioweapon that killed Earth had been developed and tested. 12 billion people were about to be avenged by the 53 survivors of Deep Space Survey ship Darwin, using weapons that the Council's most advanced sensors couldn't detect and tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. The Darwin approached the research station using standard diplomatic identification codes, broadcasting requests for emergency medical assistance for crew members allegedly suffering from a rare genetic disorder. The Council, confident in their control of human survivors, granted docking permission without suspicion. That was their second mistake. As the Darwin's crew disembarked onto the research station, each carrying medical supply containers that actually held enough molecular disruptors to dissolve the station's superstructure, Sarah Chen watched from her command chair and spoke quietly into her communications array. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Endurance, broadcasting on all human frequencies. Today we begin to collect the debt owed for 11 billion lives. To any humans receiving this message, remember that we are not seeking justice. Justice would require mercy. We are seeking vengeance, and vengeance requires only that our enemies understand the price of murdering human children." The research station's destruction would be visible from 17 star systems when its fusion reactors cascaded. The survivors would ensure it was also recorded and broadcast across the galactic network, along with a simple message in 93 different languages: "Humanity remembers. Humanity comes for you. Humanity shows no mercy to those who show no mercy to human children." The Council had created a monster by killing Earth. Now they were about to discover exactly what kind of monster they had created. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the sacred chambers of the Eternal Archive, a massive space station that had served as the seat of galactic government for 4 millennia. Representatives from 67 civilizations materialized as holograms around the circular assembly, their various forms creating a spectrum of evolutionary possibility that had once inspired awe in younger species. Today, that assembly was consumed by something unprecedented in Council history: fear. Chancellor Vexstar of the Hegemony Prime spoke first, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that betrayed deep agitation. In the past 37 standard days, we have lost 14 research facilities, 6 administrative centers, and 2 orbital manufacturing platforms. The attacks show impossible coordination for a species reduced to fewer than 60,000 individuals scattered across known space. Councillor Merthak, representing the aquatic collective, rippled her tentacles in distress. The humans should have been grateful for our mercy. We reduced their population to sustainable levels instead of eliminating them entirely. This response is completely irrational. Ambassador Kethran of the Silicon Brotherhood projected his thoughts directly into the Assembly's shared consciousness. Perhaps we underestimated the psychological impact of our population control measure. The surviving humans appear to have developed what their psychologists called nothing left to lose syndrome. Nothing left to lose? Chancellor Vexstar's crystalline spires resonated with confusion. They have their lives, their remaining colonies, the opportunity to rebuild within proper parameters. They should be focusing on species preservation, not these pointless attacks. High Councillor Yathara, the eldest member of the Assembly and representative of the first species that founded the Council, spoke with a voice like wine through ancient trees. The human response pattern does not match any previous species adjustment we have implemented. They are not seeking negotiation, territorial concessions, or survival guarantees. Our intelligence analysis suggests they are actively seeking maximum damage to Council infrastructure regardless of their own survival probability. The holographic display at the center of the Assembly showed tactical analyses of the human attacks. Each strike had been precisely planned to cause maximum destruction while minimizing human casualties. The research station in the Vega system had been completely destroyed using molecular disruptors that shouldn't have been available to human technology. The administrative center at Kepler 452 had been infiltrated and its data cores corrupted with computer viruses that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of Council information systems. Most disturbing were the biological attacks. 3 Council medical facilities had been struck with engineered pathogens specifically tailored to the immune systems of hegemony and collective species. The humans had somehow acquired detailed genetic information about Council member species and weaponized it with terrifying efficiency. How are they obtaining this intelligence? Councillor Merthak demanded. Our security protocols should prevent any species from accessing genetic databases for Council member races. Chancellor Vexstar's form dimmed with what his species displayed as shame. The bioweapon development program required extensive study of human physiology and psychology. Our research teams also compiled comparative data on Council member species for calibration purposes. It appears the humans have accessed those databases. The implications hit the Assembly like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just learned how to fight back, they had learned how to target every species in the Council with biological weapons derived from the Council's own research. Ambassador Kethran's silicon matrix flickered with rapid calculations. If the humans have access to our genetic research data, they potentially possess the capability to develop targeted biological weapons for all 67 member species. This transforms them from a managed nuisance to an existential threat. High Councillor Yathara raised one ancient appendage for silence. There is something else the Assembly must understand. Our long-range monitoring stations have detected human vessels in previously unexplored systems. They appear to be investigating the remains of extinct civilizations that underwent Council population management in previous centuries. The Assembly fell silent. The Council's management of dangerous species was not a secret among member civilizations, but the details of past corrections were classified at the highest levels. If the humans were uncovering evidence of previous genocides, how many species have we managed in this manner? Councillor Merthak asked quietly. Over the past 4,000 years, 47 species required population adjustment, Yathara replied. 31 were reduced to sustainable levels. 16 required complete elimination due to excessive aggression indices. Chancellor Vexstar's crystalline form brightened with realization. The humans are not just seeking revenge for their own losses. They are positioning themselves as avengers for all previously managed species. Meanwhile, aboard the Endurance, Captain Chen was reviewing intelligence reports that confirmed her darkest suspicions. The human exploration teams had discovered the remains of the Kethmori Confederation, a peaceful trading civilization that had been managed 300 years ago for expanding too quickly beyond their home system. The Veltheri Republic, wiped out for developing faster-than-light communication technology that the Council deemed destabilizing. The Morgani Collective, eliminated for questioning Council taxation policies. 47 species, Dr. Petrov reported via secure transmission from Xenobiology Station. The Council has committed genocide against 47 different civilizations over the past 4 millennia. We're not their first victims. We're just the first ones who survived long enough to fight back. Sarah studied the data flowing across her screens. Each extinct civilization had shown the same pattern: rapid technological advancement, expansion beyond their home system, and, then, sudden silence. The Council maintained galactic stability by murdering any species that grew too quickly or questioned their authority too loudly. Captain, we're receiving transmission from Admiral Rodriguez, Lieutenant Morrison reported. Priority 1 encryption. Rodriguez's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim but determined. Sarah, our intelligence teams have completed analysis of the Council archives we recovered from the Vega station. The situation is worse than we thought. How much worse? The Council doesn't just manage individual species. They manage the entire galaxy's evolutionary development. They've been deliberately suppressing technological advancement and cultural development for 4,000 years. Every species that shows potential for challenging their authority gets quietly eliminated. Sarah felt a cold rage settling deeper in her chest. They're not just galactic peacekeepers. They're galactic parasites. Exactly. And they've made one critical error in their calculations about humanity. Rodriguez's smile was sharp and predatory. They assume we're motivated by species survival like every other race they've encountered. They don't understand that we're no longer trying to survive. We're trying to ensure they don't survive. The transmission continued for another 20 minutes as Rodriguez outlined the next phase of human operations. Phase 1 had been reconnaissance and limited strikes to gather intelligence and test Council responses. Phase 2 would be coordinated attacks designed to cripple Council infrastructure and force them to redeploy their military forces. Phase 3 would be the reckoning. How many Council military vessels are we facing? Sarah asked. Approximately 12,000 ships across all member species, not including automated defense platforms and orbital installations, Rodriguez replied. Against our current fleet strength of 43 armed vessels and 14 converted civilian ships. Those odds would be impossible for a species trying to win a conventional war. Good thing we're not trying to win a conventional war, Rodriguez said. We're trying to demonstrate to the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. Every Council facility we destroy, every Council ship we eliminate, proves to other species that resistance is possible. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the Endurance's sensor array. Captain, we have multiple faster-than-light signatures incoming, Sensor Operator Davis reported. Council military vessels, at least 6 ships. Rodriguez, we'll continue this later. Endurance out. Sarah closed the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Morrison, what are we looking at? 2 hegemony heavy cruisers, 3 collective escort vessels, and 1 ship configuration I don't recognize. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. Sarah almost laughed. The Council still believed this was a manageable situation that could be resolved through negotiation and show of force. They had no understanding of what they had created when they murdered 11 billion humans. Signal all Council vessels, she ordered. Transmit the following message: this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Endurance. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We do not show mercy to those who murder human children. If you wish to live, you will retreat immediately. If you wish to die, you will continue approaching. The Council ships continued their approach. Captain, the lead hegemony cruiser is charging weapons, Morrison reported. They're targeting our engine compartment. Looks like they're trying to disable us for capture. They want prisoners for interrogation, Sarah realized. They still think this is a conventional resistance that can be managed through proper application of force. The first Council salvo struck the Endurance's shields, brilliant blue energy cascading across the defensive barriers that had been designed to protect the ship from cosmic radiation and micrometeorites, not military-grade plasma weapons. The shields held, but barely. "Return fire," Sarah ordered. "Target the lead cruiser's weapon arrays." The Endurance's response was not what the Council fleet expected. Instead of conventional plasma or kinetic weapons, the human ship launched a spread of devices that appeared to be standard sensor probes on Council scanners. The Hegemony commander dismissed them as a desperate electronic warfare attempt. That dismissal lasted exactly 17 seconds. The sensor probes were actually delivery vehicles for the molecular disruptors that Chief Wright had developed at the mining station. When they contacted the Hegemony cruiser's hull, they immediately began converting the crystalline armor into component molecules. The cruiser's hull simply dissolved, exposing interior compartments to vacuum and causing catastrophic decompression. "Impossible," the collective fleet commander transmitted on open frequencies. "Human technology cannot penetrate Hegemony crystal armor." "You're right," Sarah replied, watching the cruiser break apart. "Human technology can't penetrate crystal armor. But human ingenuity can figure out how to convince crystal armor that it doesn't want to be armor anymore." The Council fleet found themselves facing an enemy that fought with weapons they couldn't understand, tactics they couldn't predict, and motivations they couldn't comprehend. When the second Hegemony cruiser attempted to withdraw, it discovered that the humans had mined its retreat route with devices that interfered with faster-than-light drive systems. When the collective escorts tried to coordinate their attack, they found their communications being jammed by signals that carried embedded computer viruses designed specifically for collective bioneural networks. The unknown vessel, which Sarah's database finally identified as belonging to the Silicon Brotherhood, attempted to ram the Endurance in what should have been a devastating kamikaze attack. Instead, it found itself trapped by magnetic fields that the humans had somehow generated using principles of physics that Council science claimed were impossible. "How are you doing this?" the Silicon Brotherhood ship transmitted as its hull began to buckle under magnetic forces that shouldn't have been sustainable by any known power source. "We're doing this because you made one fundamental error in your understanding of humanity," Sarah replied. "You assumed we were like every other species you've encountered, that we would prioritize our own survival over everything else. You were wrong." The Silicon Brotherhood vessel's hull collapsed completely, its exotic matter matrix unable to withstand magnetic compression beyond design specifications. "You see, when you murdered our children, you created something the galaxy has never seen before, a species that considers revenge more important than survival. We're not trying to live through this war. We're trying to make sure you don't live through it either." The last collective escort ship managed to escape into faster-than-light travel, but not before its sensors recorded everything. The recording would be transmitted to Council High Command within hours, providing them with their first clear understanding of what humanity had become. The survivors of Earth weren't just seeking revenge. They had transformed themselves into something the galaxy had never encountered, a species weaponized by grief, motivated by rage, and completely unrestrained by any desire for self-preservation. As the wreckage of the Council fleet drifted around the Endurance, Sarah opened a channel to all human forces across the galaxy. "This is Captain Chen reporting successful engagement with Council forces. Enemy casualties, 5 vessels destroyed, 0 survivors. Human casualties, none. The Council has learned that we will not surrender, we will not negotiate, and we will not be managed like their previous victims." She paused, looking at the tactical display that showed dozens of human ships moving toward Council targets across 17 star systems. "Phase 2 is now authorized. Show them what happens when they murder the children of Earth. Show them what humanity becomes when it has nothing left to lose. Show them that some things in this galaxy should not be touched." Across space, 47 different species that had been eliminated by Council management would finally be avenged. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology, their courage, or their adaptability. Humanity's greatest strength was their absolute inability to forgive those who harmed their children. The Council had created their own nemesis, and now they would learn the price of genocide against a species that considered vengeance more sacred than survival. The Eternal Archive had never been attacked in 4,000 years of galactic history. Its massive superstructure housed not only the Council chambers but the accumulated knowledge of every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, including detailed records of the 47 species that had been managed into extinction. Today, that perfect record was about to end. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the archive grow larger on his viewscreen. Around him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled prepared for what would either be their final victory or their glorious extinction. 39 human vessels against the archive's defensive fleet of 200 Council warships. Admiral were receiving surrender demands from the Archive Defense Command, his communications officer reported. Put them through, Rodriguez ordered. The holographic image of High Counselor Ythera materialized before him, the ancient being's form radiating desperation beneath its facade of authority. Admiral Rodriguez, this assault is madness. The archive contains the cultural heritage of every galactic civilization. Its destruction would be an irreplaceable loss to all sentient life. Rodriguez studied the alien leader who had overseen the genocide of 47 civilizations. You're absolutely right, Counselor. The archive contains irreplaceable cultural heritage, including the heritage of the Kethmori Confederation, the Velthari Republic, the Morgani Collective, and 44 other species you murdered for the crime of growing beyond the boundaries you set for them. Those were necessary corrections to maintain galactic stability, those were genocides, Rodriguez interrupted. And, today, you're going to pay the price for every single one of them. Ythera's form shifted in what might have been confusion or desperation. Admiral, humanity cannot survive a prolonged conflict with the Council. Even if you destroy the archive, our member species possess overwhelming military superiority. This path leads only to your own extinction. Rodriguez smiled coldly. Counselor, you still don't understand what you've created. We're not trying to survive this conflict. We're trying to ensure you don't survive it either. There's a fundamental difference that your 4,000-year empire apparently can't comprehend. The transmission ended, and Rodriguez turned to his tactical officer. Signal all vessels. Operation Reckoning is authorized. Remember, we're not just avenging Earth. We're avenging every species the Council has murdered over the past 4 millennia. The human fleet advanced on the archive in a formation that defied every principle of space warfare. Instead of maintaining defensive positions or attempting to minimize casualties, the human ships accelerated directly toward the Council's defensive fleet with no apparent regard for their own survival. The Council commanders, trained in 4,000 years of conventional warfare, found themselves completely unprepared for an enemy that treated death as an acceptable outcome rather than something to be avoided. The battle began with the Council fleet attempting to establish a defensive perimeter around the archive. Their ships were technologically superior, better armored, and outnumbered the human force by more than 5 to 1. By every conventional metric, the outcome should have been predetermined. But humanity had stopped fighting conventional wars the moment 11 billion of their people died. The first wave of human ships didn't engage the Council fleet directly. Instead, they launched thousands of the molecular disruptors that Chief Wright's teams had manufactured across a dozen mining stations. The devices appeared as harmless debris on Council sensors until they made contact with ship hulls and began converting matter into its component atoms. The second wave carried biological weapons specifically tailored to each Council member species, based on genetic data recovered from the research station where Earth's bioweapon had been developed. When these weapons found their targets, entire ship crews began dying from diseases that attacked the specific vulnerabilities of their evolutionary biology. The third wave was the most terrifying of all. These ships didn't carry conventional weapons at all. Instead, they had been converted into kinetic projectiles using the modified faster-than-light drives that New Horizon Colony had developed. When they struck Council vessels, they transferred their entire kinetic energy in microsecond impacts that vaporized everything within a kilometer radius. "This is impossible," the Hegemony Fleet commander transmitted as his crystalline dreadnought began dissolving around him. "No species fights like this. No species accepts these casualty rates for a tactical advantage." Captain Chen, commanding the Endurance in the fourth wave, responded over open channels. "You're right, Commander. No species fights like this. But we're not fighting for tactical advantage. We're fighting for the memory of 11 billion children who will never see the stars because you decided their lives were inconvenient for your galactic management plan." The battle raged for 6 hours, and, when it ended, the Council's defensive fleet had been completely annihilated. The cost to humanity had been devastating: 28 of their 39 ships destroyed, with only scattered lifepods and damaged vessels remaining. But the Archive's defenses were gone, and the massive station lay helpless before the surviving human fleet. Rodriguez's ship, badly damaged but still functional, approached the Archive's docking bay. His crew of 43, all that remained of New Horizons military forces, prepared to board the station that served as the heart of Galactic government. "Admiral, we're detecting massive data transmission bursts from the Archive," his sensor operator reported. "They're downloading their databases to backup locations throughout Council space." "Let them," Rodriguez replied. "We're not here to steal their data. We're here to deliver a message." The human boarding party met no resistance as they moved through the Archive's corridors. The station's population of 3 million beings from 67 different species had been evacuated through emergency protocols, leaving behind only the essential systems needed to maintain the facility. Rodriguez made his way to the Council chambers, where High Counselor Ythera waited alone in the circular assembly hall that had been the seat of galactic power for 4 millennia. "You have won, Admiral," the ancient being said. "The Archive is yours. But what do you hope to accomplish? You cannot govern a galaxy of trillions of beings with a few thousand survivors." "We're not here to govern anything," Rodriguez replied. "We're here to end the system that allows genocide to be disguised as management." He activated a device that his engineers had constructed specifically for this moment. Throughout the Archive, similar devices activated simultaneously, beginning a process that would take exactly 1 hour to complete. "You're destroying the Archive?" Ythera asked, her form rippling with something that might have been horror. "No, Counselor. We're doing something much worse than that." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "We're opening it." Across the galaxy, every communication frequency was suddenly flooded with data streaming directly from the Archive's deepest databases. For 1,000 years of classified records, detailing every species the Council had managed, every civilization they had eliminated, every genocide they had disguised as necessary correction. The member species of the Council discovered that their leaders had been systematically murdering any civilization that showed potential for challenging their authority. Younger species learned that their technological development had been deliberately suppressed to maintain Council dominance. The entire framework of galactic civilization revealed itself to be built on systematic oppression and genocide. "The galaxy will descend into chaos," Ythera warned. "Without Council authority to maintain stability, the member species will turn on each other. Countless billions will die in the wars that follow." "You're probably right," Rodriguez acknowledged. "But those billions will die fighting for their own futures, not being murdered by an empire that views them as livestock to be managed. That's the fundamental difference you never understood about humanity." Throughout Council space, the revelation of 4,000 years of hidden genocide was already triggering the response that Ythera had predicted. Member species were withdrawing their support from Council authority. Younger civilizations were organizing resistance movements. The carefully maintained stability of the Galactic Empire was collapsing in real time. Rodriguez activated his personal communicator, broadcasting on all human frequencies. "This is Admiral Rodriguez speaking from the Galactic Council Archive. Phase 3 is complete. The galaxy now knows the truth about Council management of galactic civilization. To all surviving humans, our mission is finished. Earth has been avenged. The 47 species murdered by the Council have been avenged. The future is now in the hands of those who will inherit it." He turned to Ythera, who had remained motionless throughout the data release. "You asked what we hoped to accomplish, Counselor. We wanted to ensure that no species would ever again face the choice between submission to your authority or extinction. Today, that system ends." "And what of humanity?" Ythera asked. "You have sacrificed your fleet, your colonies, your future for revenge against an empire that no longer exists. What will your species do now?" Rodriguez considered the question seriously. Scattered across the galaxy, perhaps 5,000 humans remained alive, the survivors of the most devastating revenge campaign in galactic history. They had accomplished their goal, but at the cost of any realistic possibility of rebuilding their civilization. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe we'll find some quiet corner of the galaxy and try to rebuild. Maybe we'll die out in a few generations. But we'll die knowing that we kept faith with the 11 billion people who trusted us to remember them." The communication link crackled with incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Species after species was broadcasting messages of gratitude to the humans who had destroyed the system that had oppressed them for millennia. Offers of alliance, requests for technology, invitations to establish new colonies. The galaxy was offering humanity a future built on the ashes of the Council Empire. "It seems the galaxy has other plans for your species," Yathera observed. Rodriguez listened to the flood of communications offering humanity new homes, new alliances, new possibilities for the future. The species they had freed from Council oppression were eager to repay the debt they owed to Earth's children. "Maybe we'll take them up on some of those offers," he said finally. "Maybe humanity's future isn't about rebuilding what was lost, but about building something entirely new. Something that remembers the price of forgetting that every species, no matter how small or young, deserves the chance to reach for the stars." As the archive systems completed their data release, Rodriguez opened a final channel to broadcast across the entire galaxy. "This is Admiral Miguel Rodriguez of the human species, broadcasting from what was once the Galactic Council archive. Today, 47 extinct civilizations have been avenged. Today, the system that disguised genocide as necessary management has been exposed and destroyed. Today, the galaxy learns that some things should never be touched and that the children of Earth should never have been among them." He paused, looking out through the observation windows at stars that suddenly seemed brighter, full of possibilities that hadn't existed when this day began. "To every species listening to this broadcast, the galaxy is yours now. Use it better than those who came before. Build civilizations that nurture growth instead of suppressing it. Create systems that protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Remember that the price of peace should never be the extinction of those who dream of touching the stars." As the transmission ended, the last human fleet began its journey away from the archive, carrying survivors who had traded their own civilization's future for the galaxy's freedom. Behind them, the Council Empire collapsed into civil war and revolution as 4,000 years of hidden truth finally came to light. The children of Earth would be remembered not as the species that died, but as the species that ensured no other children would die the same way. In the end, that was perhaps the greatest victory any civilization could achieve, ensuring that their sacrifice meant something beyond their own survival. Humanity had learned to reach for the stars. When those stars tried to clip their wings, humanity had taught the galaxy that some species burned too bright to be extinguished quietly. The last lesson of Earth would echo across the galaxy for millennia to come: never underestimate what parents will do to avenge their children.